assess the patient's viability, CNS recovery, and attempt to wean. If we can't wean the patient, then we need to consider short-term or so-called non-durable devices. And there are a number of indications. We would like to try to wean these off if we can. We can use it to decompress the left ventricle. We can use it for right ventricular support. And we can keep the patient in a relatively stable situation so we can make a decision about where to go next. If the patient's unable to be weaned, then we come to what we call the long-term or durable devices as a bridge to transplant, as destination therapy for those patients who are not candidates, and sometimes a bridge to decision because it's possible for a patient who was a destination therapy to actually improve to the extent of qualifying for transplant, or somebody who's on a transplant list to deteriorate to become destination therapy. So let's talk a little bit about short-term, non-durable devices. And at our institution, the one that we have the most experience with is called the Centromac. This is an external centrifugal device. It has a magnetically levitated impeller which really reduces the blood contact. And there are certain advantages. First of all, it's placed by a sternotomy, which means that the groins are free. So ultimately we can mobilize the patient. So you can see that it's externally placed, and if this pointer is working, look. You can place the inflow cannula from the left atrium, and the surgeon then places the outflow into the aorta. The second advantage that's quite important is the ability to provide right ventricular assist device as well. So you can see the inflow comes from the right atrium and the outflow goes to the pulmonary artery. And this really addresses the very frequent occurrence of right ventricular failure. A third advantage, and you can see the bedside, the external centrifugal devices, the darker color would be the right ventricular assist device, the more red color would be the left ventricular assist device, but it allows you to actually put a membrane oxygenator on the RVAD circuit. So now you can provide oxygenation extracorporeally for a patient who has severe respiratory failure. One disadvantage with peripheral VA ECMO, we always acknowledge, is that because you're putting the arterial blood up through the femoral artery, you're increasing left ventricular afterload, and the heart is facing retrograde flow. And you can see that on echo you maybe see distension of the left ventricle, especially when the left ventricular function is poor. Now, one of our cardiac surgeons, Dr. Koji Takeda, started to put left ventricular drainage in the apex of the left ventricle via mini thoracotomy, so you can see the arterial line coming out of the left ventricular apex. But then he did something very creative. He took the arterial cannula out of the femoral artery and put it in the axillary artery. And what this does is two advantages. One, it enhances cerebral blood flow. And secondly, you now have the blood flow going in the same direction that the heart is pumping. So you're decreasing left ventricular afterload. You can see there's a membrane oxygenator spliced into the circuit. Once the patient's oxygenation improves enough, then the venous cannula and the membrane oxygenator are removed. And now what one has, essentially, is a minimally invasive LVAD, with the arterial outflow from the left ventricular apex, arterial inflow to the axillary artery. The patient can be out of bed, can be mobilized. You avoid a sternotomy, which is a major cause of systemic inflammatory response syndrome when you reoperate on these patients. More traditionally, our cardiology colleagues have been using external minimally invasive centrifugal devices such as the tandem heart. The venous drainage comes from the left atrium via the foramen ovale, goes down to descend to a critical pump, and then goes back up the aorta. Again, the potential disadvantage of increasing left ventricular afterload. There are a number of advances now percutaneously using a cannula analogous to the Avalon cannula. A cannula is passed up the femoral vein, drains the right atrium, and then at the same time injects blood into the pulmonary artery to support the right ventricle. And this can also be done as an open procedure. You see the surgeon placing a cannula in the right atrium that drains the venous blood and then puts it out in the pulmonary artery. And this is an X-ray showing the plumbing that you have. A major advance is the impeller rotary pump. So this is an internally implantable via the femoral vein and femoral artery. So the femoral artery pump will go through the aortic valve, and essentially the impeller sucks blood out of the left ventricle pumps it into the aorta. So again, you're decreasing left ventricular afterload with a device that is indwelling in the heart. And more recently, the right ventricular function can also be supported by a device placed in the inferior vena cava going up into the pulmonary artery. And this can be done as a minimally invasive procedure, or it also can be done as an open procedure. And here you see drainage from the right atrium, and the impeller is placed into the pulmonary artery. And other companies are now getting into the act. This is a HeartMate, a PHP device, and you can see it actually goes through the aortic valve, and then a mesh is inflated. But it's the same basic principle of drawing blood out of the left ventricle and into the aorta. Now, these devices were really developed for use in patients who are going into cardiogenic shock as a temporary salvage procedure, or to support patients undergoing very difficult cath lab procedures. And then our cardiology colleagues taught us to use them in the postoperative period, mainly, first of all, to decompress the left ventricle, but now also to provide right ventricular support in a patient with a more durable LVAD. Now, heart of the press are devices such as this, really for patients with less severe heart failure, and this aortix is still experimental, but the idea is it's put up the femoral artery, it anchors itself in the thoracic descending aorta, and then it entrains blood by intermittent jet flow that correlates with the pumping of the heart. So we'll start to see more and more miniaturization of these devices in patients with less severe heart failure. Let's consider the long-term durable devices, and these would be for patients who are not in cardiogenic shock, may be stable on inotropic support and starting to show signs of organ dysfunction, particularly acute kidney injury, for example. And we've seen really an explosion of use of these devices. The red line is the total number of ventricular assist devices through the Intermax registry, and the blue line are the number of institutions that are placing these devices. And we see very important trend in development. We started with the HeartMate 1, a pulsatile, very large pump, and you can see the trend is towards increasing miniaturization, direct left ventricular implantation above the diaphragm, and minimally invasive by the left thoracotomy. A major advance was the development of non-pulsatile flow devices, and the red line is survival with the original HeartMate 1, and the blue line is the survival with continuous flow devices that can be miniaturized much more. And this is really what changed the landscape. And so since 2006, really we have been using endurable devices, with the exception of total artificial heart, continuous flow devices with their advantages and limitations. What could call the second generation durable device has axial flow. And what you see here is there's drainage out of the apex of the left ventricle, an impeller, and then return to the ascending aorta. It's placed under the diaphragm. This is a closer up view. So again, there's minimal contact with the blood, but there is the potential for thrombus formation within the impeller. What's very important physiologically is to understand that these devices do not replace the total cardiac output. Some of the blood flow is still going across the aortic valve. It's actually quite important to keep the aortic valve open to prevent thrombus formation, or if there's thrombus on the aortic valve, keep the valve closed so to minimize the danger of cerebral thrombus. A unique device that really is far ahead of its time is the Jarvik 2000, and this was invented by Robert Jarvik. You can see it is an impeller device placed in the apex of the left ventricle, smaller than the HeartMate 2, which I'll talk about in a minute. It can also be placed via a left thoracotomy into the descending aorta. That's a huge advantage. And the drive line goes outside the pleura and comes out behind the patient's occiput because of the increased blood supply, less risk of driveline infection, and this allows the patient to mobilize. But I make this akin to a Volkswagen Beetle with the old manual shift, because the only things that you can adjust are the gears. First gear would be 8,000 revolutions per minute up to 12,000. It's very difficult to really monitor this without the serial echoes. But another distinct advantage of the Jarvik is that 8 seconds out of every 60 seconds, the flow slightly flows. What you see on the left echo is the aortic valve is not opening because the flow is relatively high. When the flow slows down on the right, you see the aortic valve is opening, and this cuts down on thrombus formation. And the newer devices all try to integrate some variation in flow. The third generation, the major difference here is that these are centrifugal devices placed into the apex of the left ventricle, so they're super diaphragmatic, less risk of pocket infection. But the basic physiologic principles are very similar. This is the HeartMate 3, and you can see the way that it's positioned from the apex to the ascending aorta. It is really an adaptation of the centromag, magnetically levitated centrifugal flow device that I showed you earlier on, and you see radiographically what the view here. Just completed is the so-called Momentum 3. This is a multi-center study comparing HeartMate 3 to HeartMate 2 as bridge to transplant and destination therapy, and the endpoint was 6-month event-free, either disabling stroke or device exchange. And what you see is that there were longer event-free 6-month survival with the HeartMate 3 than the HeartMate 2. So I think we're going to see more use of the HeartMate 3. Currently, the HeartMate 2 is the device used the most. Hardware HVAD, further miniaturization, same principle from the left ventricular apex. Because it's small, at the Berlin Heart Center, they've actually put in a right ventricular support device. The MVAD is even further miniaturization. There are still some issues, but you can see again, you could have a right ventricular support device as well. And then the 5th generation goes back to the impeller device above the diaphragm, but the major advantage here is the ability to monitor these devices from a distance using a smartphone. And then finally, and really laying the table here for Dr. Shirley, the total artificial heart. Very important differences here. We're completely replacing the ventricles, and this is hostile flow. The main indication for the syncardia total artificial heart would be patient in profound shock with a septal rupture, so you can't put in an LVAD, or intractable ventricular tachycardia or left ventricular thrombus. The disadvantage until quite recently has been the console, which is massive, but this is recently being miniaturized. But still, there's a lot of contact activation, and most recently in France, it's the development of the Carmack total artificial heart. I'm sure we'll hear more of this from Dr. Shirley, where it is bovine pericardium to try to decrease contact activation and inflammation. So finally, the ongoing challenges that we face with these devices, even though they may be life-saving, and remember, 50% of patients awaiting heart transplant die before they can get their heart because of the limitation of donor hearts. But the issues are contact activation causing bleeding, vasoplegic shock, and systemic inflammatory response syndrome, especially in the first 20 to 48 hours after placement. Especially with restenotomy, we see an even greater systemic inflammatory response. The LVAD is limited because of suction events. If we put the RPM too high, we literally cause left ventricular collapse, deviation of the septum, and then right ventricular failure, so the patient can go into acute cardiogenic shock. We follow this with serial echoes, and we can decrease the RPM, give more fluid, or unload the right ventricle in this situation. Already addressed the concern about aortic valve opening and right ventricular failure. Optimal anticoagulation, the balance between excessive anticoagulation and bleeding. These patients have about a 25% incidence of GI bleeding because of arteriovenous malformations that appear to develop, probably because of non-heart style flow. At the same time, they also have a continuing risk of device thrombosis and embolic stroke, which is obviously devastating. Total artificial heart, the challenges there are miniaturization, durability, and then ultimately mobilization, avoiding driveline infection by the use of transcutaneous energy transfer, which is still in development. Hopefully we'll be able to use in the near future. So I hope that this has helped look at the picture of the overall treatment of severe heart failure with mechanical circulatory devices. And again, thank you very much for the invitation.